Viewer discretion is advised. You've heard it 1,000 times. But in this episode, it's not just a disclaimer, it's a warning about the raw, unpredictable human emotions that drive everyday citizens into high-speed pursuits, aggressive standoffs, or desperate acts. It begins with flashing lights, a nervous twitch, and the unmistakable sound of tires screeching against asphalt. A car flees a stop, its driver already calculating whether they'll make it home or land in jail. Why do people run? It's not always about hiding drugs. Sometimes it's fear, sometimes it's pride, and sometimes it's because they think they're out of options. In this gripping compilation of Season 29's most shocking arrests, we break down not just what happened, but why it happened. Part 1. Panic Behind the Wheel, the Michael Pursuit Case. Scene overview. It starts with a quiet observation. A car pulls out of a house already on the police's radar. The vehicle makes a few subtle, suspicious moves, no turn signal, odd lane switching, nothing huge. But to a trained eye, these small infractions are often the tip of the iceberg. An officer calls it in. Let's go ahead and initiate a traffic stop. Seconds later, he didn't want to do that. Did he? Looks like he's probably not going to stop. The sirens light up the street. A pursuit begins. Commentary when instinct kicks in. For most civilians, a traffic stop is just a brief inconvenience. But for people carrying guilt, contraband, or prior trauma, the thought of stopping can feel like the beginning of the end. That's what makes this case with Michael so compelling. He wasn't just evading, he was unraveling. The pursuit, Michael's vehicle takes off through the streets of Indiana. Sirens blare. Dash cams catch the blur of asphalt, the chaotic chase, and the unmistakable tension in the officers' voices. Eventually, the vehicle crashes. A sudden halt. Doors fly open. A suspect runs, but adrenaline only carries you so far. Officers close in and detain him on the ground. As they cuff him, one officer calmly says he threw dope out that window. Drugs and denial. When officers begin questioning Michael, he's visibly panicked, injured, and teary-eyed. His responses aren't the defiant denials of a hardened criminal. They're confused, childlike, broken. I didn't think y'all were cops at first. I thought you were some Mexican dudes who were after me. This isn't a rehearsed excuse. It's a raw psychological defense. Michael isn't trying to manipulate. He's trying to justify his fear. Officers ask, "Why didn't you stop when you saw the lights and sirens?" He answers, "I'd already took off. I figured y'all were going to arrest me anyway." Analysis, the psychology of panic. This moment tells us a lot about fight or flight responses in real life. According to behavioral psychology, people with trauma or addiction histories often default to panic. The brain stops evaluating rational options and instead focuses on escaping consequences, even imaginary ones. What makes this dangerous is that law enforcement doesn't know which version of panic they're facing. Is this suspect scared or predatory? Is he armed? Is this emotional or tactical? That ambiguity can escalate a low-level offense into a deadly encounter. Real-life example. The case of Corey Jones. In 2015, Corey Jones, a drummer and churchgoer, was stranded on the side of the road in Florida. An undercover officer approached him without a uniform or marked vehicle. Thinking he was being robbed, Corey pulled out his licensed firearm and was tragically shot dead. Context and communication matter. Had the encounter been framed differently, the outcome might have been another routine night. Back to Michael. Once Michael is secured, officers calmly assess his injuries. One officer says, "Had you just stopped, the worst you probably would have gotten was a ticket." Michael responds, almost whispering, "I knew y'all were going to arrest me. Y'all always do." Here we see the psychological toll of repeat encounters with the justice system. Michael didn't evaluate his specific situation. He projected his entire criminal past onto that one stop. This shows how criminal history creates a self-fulfilling prophecy. Suspects believe they'll be arrested, so they act in ways that guarantee it. Evidence recovery. After the pursuit, officers begin retracing the suspect's route. They use dash cam footage to identify a spot where an object was tossed from the window. Officers fan out and comb the area, a classic grid search. A K-9 officer joins the hunt. The dog sniffs through alleyways and construction debris. Suddenly, it sits a trained alert. Officers find several baggies and a small amount of what appears to be methamphetamine ice form. They field tested on scene a standard color test. Orange indicates meth, it's positive. Street-level meth, a quick overview. Methamphetamine in ice form is particularly dangerous due to its high purity. Easy smokability. Immediate dopamine flood, which leads to intense addiction. Street meth often travels through rural routes and is distributed in baggies like the ones found in this case. Dealers typically carry small quantities to avoid felony weight charges, but keep paraphernalia scales baggies that signal intent to distribute. Officers' words. It's not needed, but it feels good. One officer reflects, people come up and say thank you, but I always say it's not needed. Still, it makes you feel that much better about this job. This quote sums up the emotional tightrope officers walk. They don't do it for praise, but when it comes, it reaffirms their sacrifice. Commentary. How the system interacts with emotion. Michael's case is more than an arrest. It's an example of how fear can drive dangerous decisions, how drug addiction clouds judgment, and how communication by officers can de-escalate tense moments. Had the officer not remained calm, this could have been another tragic headline. Instead, we get a rare look into what humanity looks like in uniform. Transition to next part. Coming up next, another suspect, another pursuit, but this time it ends in a violent crash, a stolen motorcycle, and an officer face-to-face with a breathless, bleeding man at 50 mph impact. And still he survives. Part 2, high-speed recklessness. The stolen motorcycle pursuit. Scene overview. Speed. Sirens. A motorcycle streaks down the street, cutting through traffic like a bullet. It's not a joyride, it's a fugitive on wheels. Earlier in the day, this man had already evaded police once. But now, under the cover of dusk, officers have eyes on him again. 2 officers in pursuit of a stolen motorcycle, doing about 90 miles per hour. The chase isn't just dangerous, it's personal. He's been taunting the system all day. Now the officers are determined to bring him in before anyone gets hurt. Commentary. Chasing the most dangerous vehicle on the road. Motorcycles are among the most challenging and risky pursuits law enforcement can face. They're fast, they're maneuverable, and the rider has no protection. Any misstep can result in a fatality for the rider, the officer, or a civilian. So why do police still engage? Because when someone on a bike flees recklessly, crashes through red lights, or weaves through residential streets at 90 mph, they're not just breaking the law, they're actively endangering the public. The pursuit intensifies. We hear the officer's urgent comms. He's off-road driving on the sidewalk. He almost wrecked out. Now he's on Vertex, still going. He just connected with Knuckles. Bon May, Tafton and Lumrock wrecked out. The suspect flies off the road, T-boning a civilian vehicle. The crash is violent. Chaos erupts. Civilians scream. Officers rush in. The biker is sprawled out on the asphalt, motionless but alive. Barely. On the ground, life and death moments. One officer crouches beside the suspect. "Can you talk to me, man? Can you tell me what your name is?" The man can barely breathe. He mumbles. His body took a brutal hit, possibly back injuries, maybe internal trauma. But he's conscious. Nearby, the couple in the civilian vehicle are shaken, but miraculously uninjured. The woman explains, "I didn't see him. I saw the cop lights and started screaming for my dad to stop, but it was too late." Commentary. Civilian impact. The hidden victims. In most police chase videos, the camera follows the suspect, but here the lens shifts. We see a daughter in shock, trembling on the sidewalk. A father unsure how badly his truck is damaged. A driver's face frozen in the split-second moment of collision. These are the hidden victims of pursuits, the bystanders whose lives are forever altered by someone else's choice to run. Analysis. The high-speed trade-off. Critics often ask, why chase at all? The truth is, it's a dilemma. If police don't chase, suspects learn they can flee with impunity. If police do chase, they risk public safety. Some departments adopt no-chase policies unless a violent felony is suspected. Others leave it up to officer discretion. In this case, the fleeing suspect already evaded once, and the vehicle was confirmed stolen. He had to be stopped. Real-world parallel. The tragedy of Maritza Gomez. In 2020, a 15-year-old girl named Maritza was killed in California when a stolen SUV being pursued by police T-boned her family's car. Her death reignited debates around chase policies. However, it was later revealed the suspect was a repeat violent offender wanted for multiple felonies. If not stopped, his rampage could have continued. Chases aren't black and white. They're gray zones filled with imperfect choices. Post-crash paramedics, panic and processing officers shift roles from enforcers to caretakers. They check vitals. Call EMS. Calm the civilian witnesses. Just keep breathing for me, bud. You okay, ma'am? Did he hit your side or the front? The rider is eventually stabilized and transported to the hospital. Officers also determine that the license plate on the motorcycle doesn't match the vehicle. The plate returns to another stolen motorcycle. Another layer of deception, another charge. Officer insight, policing, and legacy. At the end of the segment, one officer reflects on following in his father's footsteps. My dad's been working with the sheriff's office since 1991. He's the reason I'm here today. This quiet moment reminds us for every high-speed chase, there's a human being wearing the badge. Someone with a family, a history and pride in what they do. The badge isn't just a symbol of power. It's a torch passed down through generations. Lesson from this encounter. This case is a perfect storm of a stolen vehicle. Prior evasion, reckless speeds, and a devastating crash. It shows how split-second choices to run or stop, to push or pull back, can have permanent consequences. But it also reveals the multi-layered role of law enforcement, first responders, investigators, trauma support, and sometimes a last line between chaos and safety. Transition to next part. Coming up next, a new kind of confrontation. This time it's not a chase. It's a foot pursuit triggered by a bag of synthetic marijuana and a man panicking about his kids being home alone. What happens when desperation, parenting, and probation collide? Let's find out in Part 3, Desperate Dealers and Synthetic Drugs. Part 3, Desperate Dealers and Synthetic Drugs, Running from Kush and Responsibility. Scene overview. It begins on a sidewalk near a convenience store. An officer spots a quick exchange between two men. Suspicious, casual. One man hands the other a small package. When questioned, the man casually responds, "He just gave it to me. It's Serenity." Serenity, also known as K2 or synthetic marijuana, is a lab-made chemical compound designed to mimic THC, cheap, potent, and unpredictable. The officer doesn't buy the story and moves in. "Come over here, step away from the car." Moments later, another suspect bolts. A foot chase erupts. Flight over fatherhood. As officers tackle the fleeing suspect to the ground, he pleads, "Please, sir, I got kids at home. I can't go to jail. I just got out. I panicked." His tone isn't aggressive, it's heartbreaking. He's not just resisting, he's pleading for mercy. The reality sinks in fast. He's on probation for controlled substance possession. He just accepted a bag of synthetic marijuana. He ran and now he's caught. What started as a casual sidewalk conversation turned into a felony. Commentary: what synthetic drugs do to the streets. K2. Kush or Serenity isn't just knockoff weed. It's a dangerous cocktail of chemicals, often sprayed unevenly onto plant material. Causes paranoia, psychosis, violent outbursts. Linked to overdoses, seizures, and bizarre behavior. Unlike natural marijuana, synthetic cannabinoids can affect people differently every time, even from the same batch. Law enforcement officers know this. That's why what looks like a minor weed bust quickly becomes a public safety crisis when Kush is involved. Back to the street, tracing the source. The officers begin questioning others at the scene. "Who gave you the bag?" "That guy in the front seat." "You sure?" "Yes." The suspect in the front seat of a car is now the main focus. When asked to step out, he hesitates. "What did I do?" "We're about to find out." Within seconds, another struggle begins. The man resists. He shouts, "I can't breathe. Please don't do this. I've got kids. I just got out of jail." It's not just fear, it's desperation. Analysis: the cycle of recidivism. This moment illustrates a critical issue in the justice system, the trap of recidivism. Many offenders are released on probation or parole, lack access to mental health care or addiction support, live in high-risk environments, have no safety net. So when temptation or survival strikes a bag of drugs, a favor for a friend, they fall back in. And when police intervene, it's not just about the law. It's about repeating a loop they already feel condemned to. Real-world example: the Baltimore Kush epidemic. In 2018, Baltimore ERs reported a spike in emergency calls involving synthetic marijuana. Many users were found hallucinating, convulsing, or even unconscious in public parks. It became clear that K2 was being sold to homeless individuals who didn't know what they were using, only that it was cheap and numbing. That's what makes this part of the episode so telling. It shows how poverty, addiction, and desperation intersect. The search and seizure officers secure all suspects and begin searching the area. They find multiple bags of synthetic marijuana, paraphernalia associated with dealing baggies, lighters, residue, a suspect with visible K2 odor on his clothes. One man even confesses, "I sleep in that bush right there. That's my spot." It's not just about catching criminals. It's about uncovering a street-level drug operation built on survival. Officer breakdown teaching through calm. Throughout the arrest, the lead officer never raises his voice. Even when the suspect resists, pleads, or cries, the officer keeps it cool. "Just breathe. We're not here to hurt you." But you ran. That's a crime. This is empathy in uniform, the kind you rarely see go viral. What that officer understands is that yelling doesn't resolve panic, but control calm, steady control might. Conversation with a user. The suspect tries to explain, "I wasn't running. I was just cleaning cars. I didn't know what was happening." When told the bag of Kush matched his scent and was found near him, he deflects. "I met those guys today. I just washed their wheels." This is common. Low-level users often deny involvement, hoping to avoid heavier charges. But proximity, odor, and testimony from others usually tell the truth. Commentary, understanding, desperation. What hits hardest isn't the drugs, it's what they reveal. Men sleeping in bushes, fathers terrified of being separated from their kids, probationers terrified of relapsing into prison. These aren't cartel kingpins, they're people trapped in the margins trying to scrape by. But when panic leads to running and running leads to resisting, the law responds accordingly. Official charges officers eventually determined the man resisted arrest and evaded detention. The drugs tested positive for synthetic marijuana. Probation violations will trigger additional detainment. The suspect, still winded, accepts it. "I was just scared. I never been in that predicament before." He says it over and over as if trying to convince himself more than the officer. Personal touch, BBQ, and balance. Before the scene closes, one officer shares, "My dad and I started entering BBQ competitions. He perfects the ribs. I mostly eat them. It's a simple reminder beneath the badge is a human being who goes home, cooks food, and laughs with family." These officers aren't just cops, they're sons, brothers, dads. They enforce the law, but they also live real lives, ones grounded in values, not just arrests. Lesson from this encounter. Synthetic drugs may seem like minor offenses, but their side effects are massive: panic, psychosis, dangerous resistance, destruction of families. What begins with a handshake and a baggie often ends in felony charges, probation violation, jail time, or worse, an overdose on the next hit. This case reminds us that every corner has a story and every suspect has a past, but choices always have consequences. Transition to next part. Coming up next, a man unhinged. We step into a backyard confrontation where a suspect armed with a pipe believes he's being watched by spirits and challenges officers to tase him. This isn't just drug-induced chaos. It's a deep dive into mental illness, spice, and the dangerous mix between hallucination and violence. Stay tuned for Part 4, Mentally Unstable Suspects and Substance Abuse. Part 4, Mentally Unstable Suspects and Substance Abuse. Spice, psychosis, and crisis response. Scene overview. This part of the compilation pivots from high-speed pursuits and drug busts to something more volatile, a domestic violence call involving a man in mental crisis. He's out back, shirtless, agitated, and grabbing dangerous objects. When officers arrive, a family member pleads, "He's crazy as hell, we're begging him to stop." The man's name is Robert, and he's clearly not sober or stable. Escalation begins. Robert clutches a cactus in one hand, blood dripping. He's pacing, sweating, muttering. Officers try to talk him down, but he starts picking up wires, threatening to choke himself. Then a taser warning. "Put it down now, or you're going to get tased." Instead of complying, Robert challenges them, "Tase me now. I don't give a son on horse." Officers deploy the taser. He goes down. But the chaos doesn't end there. Commentary: the dangerous mix of drugs and mental illness. This is where spice synthetic cannabinoids earns its reputation as one of the most unpredictable substances on the street. Its effects can include severe hallucinations, violent outbursts, seizures, and self-harm, delusions, paranoia, spiritual psychosis. Robert exhibits multiple of these symptoms: paranoia. You're all threats to me. Grandiosity. I'm an actor, a poet, I'm divine. Aggression and self-injury. This isn't a simple drug call. This is a crisis intervention. Officers become mediators. Despite the danger, officers shift from force to empathy once Robert is on the ground. They talk him down. We're not going to drop you. We're here to help you. Even while he rants, raps, and sobs, they stabilize him. It's powerful to watch officers, often caricatured as robotic or aggressive, showing restraint, patience, and compassion in a high-risk environment. Background. What is spice exactly? Spice is a catch-all term for dozens of synthetic chemicals sprayed onto plant material to mimic THC. But unlike cannabis, its chemical composition constantly changes to evade regulation. Users never know what they're smoking. It's more affordable and accessible in impoverished communities. It's been banned federally, but street variants keep evolving. Think of it as chemical Russian roulette. Robert's altered reality. At one point, Robert becomes poetic, almost lyrical. I'm an actor, a poet. I shake the ear of the atmosphere. He's ranting, sure. But he's also lost in his own world of fragmented ego surfing waves of hallucination and euphoria. He says he smoked with his uncle, mentions trying a needle. His speech is disjointed, erratic. This is drug-induced psychosis where the brain creates stories, disconnected from reality. And it's terrifying not just for officers, but for loved ones watching someone they care about unravel. Real-life example. The tragedy of Rudy Eugene. In 2012, Rudy Eugene was shot and killed by police in Miami after cannibalistically attacking a homeless man. He was suspected of using bath salts or spice. Toxicology reports were inconclusive, but the behavior pattern matched what officers see in synthetic drug cases: irrational aggression, resistance to pain, and complete detachment from reality. It's the worst-case scenario that officers train for and pray never happens. The aftermath: de-escalation and support officers restrain Robert. He's taken to the hospital for evaluation. On scene, a relative says he's a good man, just needs help. He's been like this before. It's a sobering moment. Robert isn't a villain. He's someone who fell through the cracks of the mental health system, used drugs to self-medicate, and spiraled into crisis. And the officers, they didn't see a criminal. They saw a man who needed medical intervention, not jail. Analysis: police as mental health, first responders. This case highlights a critical flaw in modern society. Police are often the only available mental health response unit. Why psychiatric facilities are underfunded. Mental health calls don't come with social workers. Officers must handle unstable individuals with no backup except each other. It's a broken system where cops become counselors, medics, and guardians, often without adequate training or resources. Related statistic: a 2016 study found that 1 in 10 police calls in the U.S. involves a mental health crisis. Yet only 15% of departments have dedicated crisis intervention teams, CIT. What we saw with Robert, that was pure instinct and field experience, not protocol. Officer insight. The power of listening. Later, one officer explains, when they're screaming, you don't scream back. You listen. You keep your voice calm, and you give them control, even if it's fake control. That's what keeps them from going over the edge. It's not tactical advice, it's emotional intelligence. And it saved Robert's life that night. Lesson from this encounter. This segment teaches us 3 vital things. Drugs like spice are far more dangerous than most people assume, not because of addiction, but because of unpredictability. Mental illness is often criminalized, but it's not criminal. It's a crisis that requires help, not punishment. Police officers, when trained and composed, can be lifesavers, not just law enforcers. The world doesn't see these moments, but they happen daily. Transition to next part. Next, we return to the streets, this time for a foot pursuit of a bail jumper. He tries to outrun his past, but officers close in, uncovering fake money, stolen goods, and a long record of bad decisions. It's not just another arrest, it's a case study in fraud addiction and the illusion of escape. Stay tuned for Part 5, Domestic Disturbances and Emotional Trauma. Part 6, Community Impact and Officer Reflections. Bail Jumpers, Fake Cash and Criminal Patterns Approx. 3 wildest, 3 500 words. Scene overview. It begins in an alley. A bail bondsman tips off police a fugitive is nearby. He skipped court-violated terms and now he's off the radar. Officers set up scanning for him in a quiet parking lot behind a health services building. Then, motion. The suspect, later identified as Brian, sees the officers and bolts. Stop, police. Get on the ground. Hands where I can see them. It's a full-on sprint but brief. He's taken down, cuffed, and searched. Commentary: the psychology of a bail jumper. People skip bail for many reasons. Fear of jail, fear of losing custody of kids, fear of violating parole conditions, or just plain ego, the belief they can outsmart the system. But the reality is this: you don't beat a warrant by running, you delay the inevitable and stack more charges. Searching Brian. As officers search Brian and his belongings, things get sketchy fast. They find fake $50 bills, drug paraphernalia, a bag of brown powder resembling heroin or meth, gift cards and receipts linked to possible fraud. Officers question him. "Where'd you get this money?" "I got it from Hastings, man. I just turned in some gift cards." They test the powder. It reacts orange, positive for methamphetamine. Officer perspective. You earned that warrant. As one officer explains to the camera, you don't run unless you've done something. And once you run, everything escalates. They inform Brian he has 3 felony warrants, possibly parole violation, possession of controlled substances, felony theft. He downplays it. They're misdemeanors, not felonies. But when your name is on the bail bond list and your co-signer's out $5,000 plus, the system takes it seriously. Fraud explained: the gift card scam. Brian's method, classic street-level fraud. Buy prepaid gift cards with stolen fake money. Return the cards for cash. Use the cash to buy drugs or flip it again. It's low-tech, but it works until they get caught. Police find receipts stuffed in his pockets. The timeline is clear. "That's not even the size of real money," one officer remarks, holding up the fake bill. No watermark, no nothing. Analysis: addiction and criminal innovation. Many repeat offenders aren't masterminds. They're addicted, desperate, resourceful in survival. They find loopholes, scams, and low-risk schemes and repeat them until caught. These aren't heists, they're cycles. The addiction keeps them chasing. The law keeps chasing them. Real-life parallel. The Coupon King. In 2021, a couple in Virginia was convicted of printing over $31 million in fake coupons from their home. They used them to get real goods, then resold those items online. They were described as non-violent, but the damage to stores and supply chains was enormous. Fraud, even when quiet, has ripple effects, and it often fuels bigger problems like meth and heroin abuse. Officer strategy: calm the adrenaline. After cuffing Brian, the lead officer talks to him. "You earned the warrant, but running just made it worse. This isn't taunting, it's education. Street arrests often double as crime deterrents. The goal: make the suspect understand that surrender is smarter than sprinting." Next case: drug den in a car. As they wrap up Brian's arrest, officers catch another vehicle circling suspiciously nearby. They investigate and find multiple bags of marijuana, ecstasy tablets, ammunition, scales and baggies, all signs of intent to distribute. It's a mobile drug operation. One suspect tries to blame his friends. "That's their stuff. It's my car, but not my weed." But the law doesn't play that game. If you own the vehicle and drugs are found, you're liable unless you prove otherwise. Commentary: the responsibility of ownership. This is a recurring issue in drug enforcement. Friends stash things in cars. Owners claim ignorance, but accountability sticks to whoever holds the keys, especially when the drugs are in plain view. The vehicle smells like weed. You have prior drug arrests. Human moment: a legacy badge. A deputy reflects on how he joined the force. "My father pinned his own badge on me when I graduated the academy. That's the badge I wear today. It's symbolic. The badge isn't just a piece of metal. It's a legacy, a reminder of what law enforcement means to those who serve for the right reasons." In a world of social media outrage and blurred body cam clips, this officer reminds us most cops aren't chasing fame. They're chasing peace, closing the loop arrests and impact. By the end of the segment, officers have caught a bail jumper, seized meth and counterfeit bills, intercepted a mobile drug operation, spoken honestly with suspects, and once again helped maintain order. It's not glamorous, it's not easy, but it's daily work that makes neighborhoods safer, one takedown at a time. Lesson from this encounter. This part teaches us bail jumping never ends well, it multiplies legal consequences. Fraud isn't just about money, it fuels deeper crime. Vehicle owners are legally accountable even when the drugs aren't theirs. Good policing is built on communication, not just confrontation. Transition to final section. We've seen the chases, the crashes, the mental health breakdowns, and the desperate cries. In our final part, we step back and look at the big picture. What can we learn from these arrests, and what do they say about society, addiction, and justice? Let's wrap it up in our conclusion and takeaway. Conclusion and takeaway: why these arrests matter. Reflection. What 25 arrests in 1 hour reveal best arrests. Season 29 isn't just a compilation of car chases, foot pursuits, or drug busts. It's a raw lens into America's streets where law enforcement collides with addiction, poverty, desperation, and broken systems all in real time. Each arrest isn't isolated, it's connected by a web of themes. Addiction, mental health, superinunderverwonnen, recidivism, over-policing versus under-resourcing, compassion versus accountability. So let's break down what we've learned. 1. Why people run. In several cases, from Michael's traffic stop to the motorcycle crash, we saw suspects make one fateful decision: they ran. But they didn't always run because they were hardened criminals. They ran because they were scared. They were on probation. They thought they'd be arrested no matter what. They had drugs or weapons to hide. Fight or flight isn't always criminal, it's often psychological. But when you flee from law enforcement, the risk to yourself and others multiplies instantly. 2. The real threat of synthetic drugs. Whether it was meth, K2, or bubble pipes, one thing became painfully clear. Synthetic drugs are the root of chaos in these encounters. Why? They cause hallucinations, violence, and paranoia. They mimic other substances, making treatment harder. They're often cheaper and more accessible than marijuana or heroin. Officers now carry Narcan trauma kits and mental health crisis cards because these drugs don't just numb, they destabilize entire communities. 3. Mental illness is being criminalized. Robert's meltdown in the backyard was not criminal in intent. It was a textbook case of a man lost in a drug-induced psychotic episode, possibly layered on top of schizophrenia or bipolar disorder. And who showed up to handle it? Not a therapist, not a psychiatrist. Police. This is one of the greatest flaws in our system today. Police are asked to solve problems they weren't trained to handle. Mental health calls become arrests instead of hospitalizations. Repeat breakdowns occur because treatment never follows intervention. 4. The cycle of probation. Poverty and pressure. From the man pleading about his kids to the suspect living in bushes, this episode highlights a sad truth. Some people run not because they're guilty, but because they're already trapped. They live on the edge. Probation violations. No job security. No stable housing. Prior charges that follow them everywhere. When they see red and blue lights, they don't see due process. They see prison. This is not a justification. It's a context. 5. The quiet bravery of good policing. For every tackle, every taser, every arrest, we also saw moments of humanity. An officer kneeling with a suspect and saying, "We're not going to let you fall." A deputy removing taser prongs while calming a man having a breakdown. Conversations instead of confrontations. Patience instead of provocation. The truth: most officers in this episode don't want violence. They don't enjoy the chase. They want peace, compliance, and the opportunity to go home safe and help others get help, not just charges. What we learned from the suspects: addiction clouds judgment. Fear leads to poor decisions. Mental health untreated becomes criminalized. Many offenders don't plan crime, they fall into it. From the officer's calm tone save lives. Split-second decisions require incredible judgment. Empathy doesn't make you soft, it makes you effective. The best arrests are the ones that don't escalate. Solutions and insights: if society wants fewer arrests like these, we need more mental health services, better addiction treatment access, job programs for parolees, officers trained in trauma-informed response, a shift from punishment to prevention, Until then, the streets will stay busy, and officers like the ones in season 29 will keep answering the call night after night. Final words, these aren't just great arrests. They're cautionary tales. They're teachable moments. They're wake-up calls about how fast things can go wrong, how deeply fear and drugs distort judgment, and how critical good police work really is. So the next time you see flashing lights in a video or a suspect tackled on the ground, ask yourself what brought them to that moment. Could it have been prevented? And who helped make sure everyone walked away alive?